everyone, welcome back to Spirit Rescue Talk. I'm your host, Amy Major, and you know my co-host, Jordan Start. We have an amazing guest today. What? I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Jordan Start?
I was saying hello to everybody, that's all.
I suppose I'll let you do that. We love her. We actually have a really great guest, Reverend Sheila Scott, with us today. She's a spiritualist minister up in Ontario, Canada. Kind of closer where Jordan is up in Canada. I'm the only the statesman here in the United States. I kind of find that we have a lot of people coming on from Canada and actually all over the world. And I was telling Jordan that we actually have quite a following in Australia. So we're kind of bringing people in from all over the world. And as you know, Spirit Rescue is a worldwide mediumship technique that many mediums all over are finally getting involved in rescue mediumship, and we're really excited to hear that. And the growth of this field is absolutely necessary. But our guest has actually been in Spirit Rescue and started it back in the 90s. And yes, that is the 1990s. Can you believe a whole other generation? There's so many people that are getting involved in Spirit Rescue. They're like, didn't even see the 1990s. And so it's really great to be having a guest on that's been doing this work for such a long time. She does do a lot of spirit rescue work, attachment removal work. She educates people, does a lot of counseling. I can tell it go on and on and on about the work that she does, but let's bring her on. Let's get her to kind of give us a little bit of a background of her and her story, because we have a really great discussion that we want to talk about today. Was getting very excited about it. Can't wait to hear it. Hi, Reverend Scott. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm well. Thank you very much. And thank you again for having me on your show. I'm very honored. Thank you.
It's awesome to have you back on. We had you on several months ago, and we like to have the most awesome guests back on the show, especially when they've been doing such amazing work in spirit rescue. And you're a wealth of knowledge in this field. And I know the last time you were on, you gave us a little bit of a background of your work. But for those who didn't get to see it or are going to go back and watch it now, could you give people just a little bit of a quick history on how you got to where you are today?
Oh, okay. I trained as a spiritualist in the mid 80s. I started when I heard about spirit rescue. Spiritualists do spirit rescue, but it's different, and has a certain way of doing it, and I wasn't really comfortable with it. So I started looking for other ways of doing it. And in the 90s, I discovered Bill Baldwin's book, and started studying that. And then I'm a hypnotherapist, so I did run across a very interesting attachment, and I helped release that because I had read Bill Baldwin's book. But I did it in a slightly different manner. And then I've just been learning as much as I can, since the 1990s. And I have seen it progress. I've seen it progress. Spirit Rescue has progressed. And it's gotten a little more, I guess, cleaner or a little, more directed. And I keep learning, because if I don't, then I think I'll get left behind or something, the old-fashioned way. So I've just seen progress. I've seen things change in the last 30 plus years, and it's good. It's good that we are seeing change and movement, and less hung up on the traditional way of doing things. So that's it, I think.
Yeah.
As we were talking earlier, because each of us came into the field of rescue mediumship at very different times in history. So I'm kind of curious, because I know my journey, but I'm curious about how all of our journeys kind of unfolded. What did we notice coming into the field? What was the view from the spiritual community or just the general collective about rescue mediumship? Curious about what's changed, what hasn't. And so I'm wondering if we can kind of go, maybe each of us can kind of discuss that a little bit and see what are the common threads.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that concept. When you brought that up, I'm like, Jordan, you're a genius. It was awesome. I think we should start with Reverend Scott, kind of because she started in rescue work first. I'd love to hear kind of like, what was the genre like around rescue mediumship? Was it something that people kind of talked about? Was it something that it wasn't talked about? And how did people understand what it was at the time? Not saying that, there were concepts of it. I just got finished writing my book that told about the history of rescue mediumship. So it's actually been around quite a long time. But how did you come across rescue mediumship, and in your development, how was that for you?
Thank you. In the 1980s, I did a 3-year part-time spiritualist program. And it was through the Spiritual Science Institute that unfortunately is no longer in existence, but it was spiritualist based. And the way that we learned to do spirit rescue was in 3rd year. And it was, we allowed the spirit, we had a control, and then we allowed the spirit to enter our bodies. And then the control would sort of talk to the spirit and say, okay, do you see the light? It's time to go. Did a little counseling, and hopefully the spirit would leave. And I was a little leery about that whole method because I saw some people really have a very difficult time, and then trying to get rid of the spirit that didn't want to leave, right? So I asked my instructor, I said, I'm not really comfortable doing this this way. Is there another way? They said, well, you could, mentally visualize the spirit in front of you and asking their guides and helpers to come and move them on. I thought, yes, because sometimes when you and ask the spirit to enter the body, you would be experiencing the trauma of their deaths, and it can be really overwhelming. It can be very traumatic. So I thought, for my safety, I don't feel comfortable doing that. So that's when I started learning different methods, and it has progressed from that method to working, like consciously speaking with the spirit or mentally speaking with the spirit and bringing in their guides and angels, right? And often asking the guides and angels to do the counseling, So, and also there's another one with using a surrogate. In one case with an attachment, my friend brought her friend over, and she said, this guy I know is acting very, very strangely. His eyes look really weird, and he's looking haunted. That was her exact words. And so we used the friend as the surrogate to connect with the attached entity. And it turned out it wasn't human. So we had to take sort of extra measures. And eventually it did leave. I think I might have mentioned this in my last time on your show, but at that time, it was the person who was acting as the medium, and I was just directing. She said, it's screaming, and I said, okay, we're gonna have to just detach it and ask Archangel Michael to take it into light. And at the very time we were doing the release work, this guy told her afterwards that he had a knife in his hand and he was going to slash his wrists. He was like this close. And it was because the entity knew that its time was up. So using a surrogate, that was something I think I learned from Baldwin, Dr. Baldwin, or I learned it somewhere. And that was very effective in this case because she felt that if she had talked to him about having a release in person, that the entity would have prevented that. So because it had really strong connection. So there's that. So the surrogate method, and then just using the angels and guides more to act as the intercessors to go to the individual and remove the entities. I worked with a lady in Wales who had 2 spirits that were constantly screaming at her. Her daughter actually intervened and called me or accessed me, and she said my mom had a very high fever, and she woke up and she had these 2 women that were screaming at her all the time. And I actually did a really strong spirit release and had the angels move in and remove these two, and told her to take sea salt baths for 3 days afterwards. She actually wanted to continue, and she said the voices faded away because a lot of it is just memory, and after that, after 6 weeks, there was no screaming women, So there's different ways of doing it, and it's just learning different techniques. I've learned the hypnotic techniques, but I find that people will, like, the entities can interfere. They'll not show up for their appointments, or they'll cancel at the last moment, that kind of thing. And it's not really the person that's canceling, but the entities are making them so anxious that they can't, they won't come in for their session. So I hope that helped. I don't know if that was what you were looking for, but that's been my experience, kind of thing.
Well, when you started doing the work, it seemed like the church already had a foundation set for doing crossover work.
Yes.
So did they ever explain how they were trained or how they learned their techniques?
This was a spiritualist tradition for mediums, like spiritualist mediums who did rescue work. And not all spiritualist mediums do rescue work. Although we're supposed to be trained in it, we don't. Or they don't, they choose not to. So it is from, the time of the beginning of spiritualism, I guess, spirits told the mediums, this is how you do a rescue. So it was the spirits that instructed the mediums on what they needed to do to help another person release the entities. So I found that fascinating. But
well, just an extension of that, what type of spiritualist union are you? Are you with the SNU? Or what type of spiritualist union are you with?
We are sort of an independent spiritualist church. But when I learned at Spiritual Science Institute, they were sort of an independent as well, and they were connected a little bit with the Canadian Spiritualist Church, but it was an independent. And the Divine Light Spiritualist Church is an independent spiritualist church in Ontario. So.
Yeah, I find they're the ones that are most supportive of rescue mediumship and spiritualist circles. And in my research work, I did find rescue circles were developed with spiritualist circle groups. But being in the United States, we have a few different unions and associations with spiritualism, and the one that I'm working through, the NSAC, National Spiritualist Association of Churches, they don't advocate for rescue mediumship. They don't do any rescue circles. They don't want to talk about it at all. And I've even sent requests to NSAC asking for us to start rescue circles again. They weren't ready for it yet. So it's nice to hear that independent spiritualist churches are doing this work. I know the SNU, the Spiritualist National Union over in Europe, they also do not support rescue circles either. Yeah. So which is odd because it originated with spiritualism.
Yeah, it did. And I think it may be, it's fear that they're afraid that they'll get possessed or something. But it's also not many teachers are teaching it anymore. And a lot of the time spirituals have crossed over and the information was not passed along. I was lucky, my instructor, Reverend Joe Brown, he's retired now. He taught the old rescue circle. And that was something I could do, but it was more, I had a different way in my mind that I would like to see it done. So that, that was different, but they're still doing this circle, the rescue circle, once a month. They have a rescue circle at the church. Yeah. Yay.
I do the happy dance now.
Yeah. And they've had some pretty wild experiences. Sorry.
Yeah. Jordan, did you want me to describe what it was
Yeah,
like
you
for
go
me?
next. I was gonna say you go next because I was last of the game.
Yeah, but you came in at the best time. Let me tell you, you are going to really help this field grow and expand. I'm so excited for the work you're doing. When I got involved in the year 2000, I did get involved in the spiritualist churches in New England, and I went to regular mediumship spiritual circles because that was the only one that they were really offering. And I would find in times I would start attracting earthbound spirits in those spiritualist circles. And that was approached with caution because I was told many times that they didn't want us bringing in those type of spirits. They were dark or evil, or they didn't belong in the spiritualist churches because they didn't prove in the continuity of life after death. And so they weren't allowed in those spiritualist circle groups. I had to develop outside of the spiritualist church when I started getting more and more activity of earthbound spirits, where I actually found a psychic center in the town that I lived in, and I found a mentor who can help me through the experiences that I had, and she trained me in what she knew, and then through my guides and my angels, and doing research online, trying to figure out what other mediums around the world were saying. Finally, I found some other mediums that were doing the work. I just started training myself on rescue mediumship. And when I found the term rescue mediumship, and I reached out to the person who actually claimed that she coined the phrase rescue mediumship with her group. She was from Australia, and she had started in the 1950s when the rescue mediumship was first developed in a more, I would say, recent form, because it has developed and changed throughout the decades and through history. When I reached out to her, she was really kind of emphasizing that rescue mediumship needed to be extended and really trained internationally. There wasn't a lot of structure to the work. Every medium was sort of doing it in their own unique way. There wasn't real training in this work at all. It was just figure it out as you went. Which I don't think is good at all, because there are, in mediumship, regular mediumship, you can learn to connect to the other side and figure out the different techniques, and it can be something more easier obtained than rescue mediumship. Rescue mediumship is something where I feel you need a huge community behind you. You need training. You need to be well informed. You need a supportive system behind you, because it is a darker form of mediumship in a sense, and needs a lot more support and protection than regular mediumship. So I made it a passion of mine and a mission to start creating structured training in rescue mediumship after doing it for about a decade, when I realized there were no books, there was no online schools, there was no real training anywhere, even in the spiritualist churches. So I started creating online classes. I started teaching development circles myself. I started teaching rescue circles through the instruction of my guides. And it's over the last 15, almost 20 years now training, it's really grown and expanded since then. But I didn't have a church to show me how to do it. I kind of learned through trial and error, which was a really difficult thing to do. A lot of mistakes. I did a lot of mistakes in this work, but thank goodness, I didn't go too crazy doing the work, trying to figure it all out. So, and that's kind of leads into where Jordan kind of started doing the work as well.
Yeah, because when I first recognized I was stepping into my mediumship, it would have been around, when a lot of people were awakening, 2019, 2020. 2018 was when I started opening up more, but it wasn't until 2019 where my gifts really started opening up fully, and I started recognizing, I'm a medium and I'm not connecting with the loved ones on the other side. I'm connecting with earthbounds. But because of media, there were already a number of shows and programming out that I had already seen. Everyone a lot of the time talks about Ghost Whisperer. I had seen that growing up as a kid. My mom would watch it. So I had a concept that not everybody transitioned right away and that some people could stick around and behind. And I've talked about it on the show, like some of the experiences I had when I was a kid of knowing that, but that was in the back of my mind. And I was already working as a counselor. So I had a lot of the skills to counsel already. And then my guides came in and said, this is what you're going to be doing a lot right now. And I said, oh, okay, well, who's going to teach me? And they said, we are. And so for a while there, my team would teach me. I would call in their team. I'd call in their loved ones. I would have my guides whispering in the ear. I'd be like, you need to guide them down this direction, counsel them down this direction. Here's a perspective. Call in their loved one. Oh, they don't have a loved one. So there was a lot of trauma, but they had a pet. Call in a pet. So I was doing a lot of that. And I would always ask them, hey, when you do your business on the other side, if you can, let me know how it went. What do I need to know? But so if other souls are like, I'm really scared and I'm really nervous, I don't know what to expect. And I have, over time, I had a lot of the same narratives and stories coming back from those souls that were coming back to give me a little bit, or their guides would come back and give me a little bit of a rundown of where they were at in their transition journey and what that was looking like. But then my contract got, a new phase. I started stepping into a little bit more of the darker work, a lot of the protective work. And I remember going to my team saying, I'm going to go crazy if I have to do this by myself. I need an instructor. I need somebody in the physical that I can connect with. I need community. Like, I need to know I'm not crazy. Because throughout that time, I would go to psychic fairs. I would find mediums all over the world and I would book readings. And they would read my energy. They would sense the earthbounds. And I was told they were all bad. They were all negative. I needed to shut this down because I was calling in really bad stuff. Not one of them went and looked to my contract. Not one of them read my energy and actually talked to my guides. The first person that actually did that was Amy. And so I remember I had a reading booked with a lady and she said, if you're going to take anything from this reading, I need you to read this book. And I got one of Amy's books, and I believe it was Toward the Light or Light the Way. I think it was Light the Way.
Light the Way?
I think it was Light the Way. Or maybe Toward the Light. The one that was more manual.
Light the Way came out in 2018.
Okay. So anyway, it was more like a manual, and I remember reading it going, this woman does everything that we're doing. This is amazing. And I'm like, oh, this is the person. And I kept hearing and feeling like book a reading with her. And I was like, she's an author. There's no way that she's got time for me. And then I felt my team push me. And then I was like, oh my God, this woman's got readings. And then from there, she couldn't get rid of me. And I remember Amy was the first person that went to my team and said, hey, you're supposed to be doing this. You're not crazy. This is normal. But from what I was noticing and I went to talk to everybody. I was talking to different mediums. I was talking to energy healers. I was talking to various religions folks because I wanted to hear the narratives. And a lot of the time it was still very, again, like these are dark spirits. They're manipulating you. You're not safe. It's bad. Shut it down. And yet my team kept coming in being like, they don't know what they're talking about right now. And I'd be like, shh, be nice. But they knew my path. And Amy was the first person that really confirmed that for me, which was very helpful. But I remember reading the book going, where's the rest of it? I was like, where's the rest of the book? And so I remember one of my readings as Amy was helping me sort through all my stuff because there was a lot of stuff happening. And I remember telling her one day, I said, where's the rest of it? Is there a course? Like, where's the rest of I know you got more because my guides told me that you know more and you didn't put it all in the book. And I need to know the more. And she's like, oh, in a few weeks, I got a rescue mediumship class. And from there on, I was taking all her classes. But it was the only program and course that I could see that talked about not only just earthbounds, but also some of the things that I had learned in working with my guides. And then Amy just expanded on that knowledge tenfold and we never went back. But
on board though, really is.
But yeah, there was no rescue circles that I could find. I didn't have the language. So that was probably a part of it. I didn't know what language to utilize when I was looking things up. So it was limited that way. But as I said, when I would go to these fairs and I would talk to almost every single medium, I spent so much money on readings just to have somebody confirm what I was feeling, what I knew. It wasn't bad. I wasn't crazy. And there was a very big rejection that would happen over and over and over again, which is sad to see, which I think is why this podcast is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I'm just grateful that you had all those resources to be able to support you and let you know, no, I'm not crazy. This does exist. See, other people are talking about it.
Yeah.
This is because it's like I didn't have that for probably about 5 or 6 years. Other than the medium in the psychic center, there were no books. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And when you did try to talk about it, you were shamed in some way. And I remember the first 5 years, and I was following a lot of other well-known mediums. And so I'm going to put something out there that I was a big fan of John Edwards, still am, still a big fan of John Edwards. Good job, John. And he started talking about, the psychic he went to and got a reading with, or the astrologer. So I'm just like, I'm going to go to the same astrologer. She's going to read me. She's going to be good. She's going to tell me this is real. And I finally get an appointment with her. And I get on the phone with her and I tell her everything that's kind of happening. And she said, Amy, I got to tell you, these spirits are bad. You got to stay away from them. You're not supposed to do this work. This is really bad. And I was so disappointed in that reading, because I was waiting for some psychic that could literally read into my contract, like Jordan was saying, to say that I was, really meant to do this work. This is my contract. This is my agreement, which is what the spirit world kept telling me year after year after year. And I would believe them, but I would doubt, because everyone around me here in the physical world was telling me that wasn't true. And they were telling me that all of these guides were just evil spirits that were trying to seduce me into the darkness, or to create false narratives for me to follow so that I would get lost in the dark. And then I would think to myself, well, these are the same guides that have been talking to me since I was like 4 years old. These are the same guides that would come in and tell me that I was also supposed to talk to spirits in the light and to help people. These are the same guides that are telling me that I'm supposed to talk to these spirits, guide them back to God, help them find their way back to light and love, and to release their trauma and their wounding. What type of dark spirits would say that? That didn't resonate with me, that they could be bad, because I felt in my heart, and my guides kept saying, you're going to have 1,001 people tell you not to do this. The only thing you actually need to do is listen to your heart and to what you feel is right, because that's the only thing that should ever be directing you on your path. Not somebody else's words, not somebody else's opinion, but how you truly feel about the work and what you are doing, and how you feel about yourself involved in this work. I had to stick to rescue mediumship, no matter what any other medium or psychic was going to say. I had to trust what I felt was right. And so here we are 25 years later, and I'll still be doing this for another 25, hopefully maybe longer than that. And Reverend Sheila Scott, you've been doing this for a long time. Did you ever have any doubts, or anyone kind of telling you not to do this work when you first got started?
Oh, yes. Sorry, excuse me. I had to sort of keep it very quiet. And that was part, like, there was a sort of a loneliness, because I couldn't really talk to anybody about it in the spiritual community, because the same thing. You're dealing with darkness, you're dealing with negative spirits. They're going to, they're going to lie to you. You're going to get sucked in. And it was like, I don't feel that. I feel I have a really strong spirit team, and I know they won't let that happen. So I did shut that down, but I continue to learn. And you know how spirit will bring you people that need help. So, through the vine, I was asked if I could help, and of course, like I said yes. But it was, I can totally relate to what you're saying, Amy. And it was kind of lonely. And when you have a team, you want, like a physical team, you want to make sure that you can trust them, that they're not going to freak out. And you mentioned this to experienced spiritualists, and they kind of like, oh my God, so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to do this pretty much on my own, but with my angels and guides. And that's pretty much what I've been doing. And I learned, the Spirit Rescue Circle through my church, but that was about it. And I just kept on learning, and my guides were telling me, yes, pick up this book, read this book, connect, just start talking to people that we'll tell you who you can talk to and who you can't. Like they'll just say, don't talk to this person about it, but you can talk to so and so, and because they're open. And gradually, I found that more and more people are becoming to accept this as being an okay thing to do. So, yeah.
More accepting than it's ever been in the past, don't you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I definitely for sure think that it is. I mean, I still think there's still a lot of misconception because everything both of you have said, I experienced too, despite having more groups and books available, but also similar to Sheila, like my team would direct me to things and say, not this one, not this one. Amy, yours was personally the only book that my team actually said it was okay for me to read when I'd be looking them up. So, but it was, I think about what might prevent people from entering this field. And there's a lot of fear base that I'm noticing throughout history of, and it's interesting because all of us got the message from our team one way or another of the, like, follow your heart, like go with your inner intuition. Like, what you're supposed to be doing. Don't allow the chitter chatter or the viewpoints of other people to dictate your journey. But that's really hard to do, especially when there's risk, right? There's risk of, yes, in the spirit world, because we talked about, Amy mentioned earlier that, it's a little bit of a darker form of the spirit world. Angels and guides and spirits in the light, they're not trying to overtake your free will. Some of the earthbounds and some of the other things might, right? They don't respect boundaries the same way.
Right.
So, there's inherent a little bit more risk, but there's also risk of community, right? Like, as Sheila was saying, like you get drawn to who can you talk about, but also don't talk to them because they're not going to see it the same way. And I also think about even family. If someone's family is going to be okay with this, I've met folks who have started in this work and, they had a long line of mediums and then a rescue medium comes in the family line and now suddenly they're ostracized because we don't deal with that over here. Right. So there's risk of community. We all know through the spiritual journey, your life gets flipped upside down. You start having to address things. Right. But, I'm noticing there's a similar narratives that still continue to be reperpetuated even today, which I think just shows some of the misinformation that's out there and some of the narratives that people might be engaging with that, frankly, I personally think are quite concerning. And I know we talked a little bit earlier before we got on about some of the narratives that we find being in this field, those who engage in rescue mediumship. We're noticing some up and coming narratives that may prevent folks from engaging in rescue work, but expanding beyond that. Amy, you're the one who brought up the narrative. Want to take it?
I'm assuming you're saying the one about not going into the light.
Yes.
Yeah, brought that up because I even saw something today on this. There seems to be a new narrative and a belief system that if you are to go into the light, it's a soul trap. And I know a lot of you are hearing this out there, that the light is a soul trap. It's a karmic loop, and that you have to repeat the same life over and over again, or you have to go through various incarnations to be a slave, a conscious slave for alien beings that created us in the beginning. And that many people are being told that they have to actually turn from the light and go somewhere else. They're not being told where to go. They're not being told what's going to happen to them after they turn from the light. They just said, oh, just keep floating out in space and see what happens. That seems to be honest to me, because if you're just floating out into the nether, like, okay, I'm going to go out in space. there's no community, there's no support. I guess what they're saying is once you turn from the light, that you're actually going to see something that is more profound, that's actually going to take you where you're actually supposed to be to transcend the matrix, which is beginning to be pretty big. I know alien topics are really huge right now, especially with the movies and government files. But the whole concept of turning from the light itself is really, it's threatening to souls, for one. It's creating a narrative that can be very damaging. My guides told me years and years ago when I first started getting involved in rescue mediumship that they were preparing for something. Because I asked them, I said, why is rescue work so important, for one? And they said, well, there are a lot of earthbound spirits, but there will be tons more in your future. And you have to start creating training so that other mediums can train in this work, because it's going to grow exponentially and so many people are going to become earthbound. They didn't explain why, but I'm now beginning to understand what they meant by that, because I'm seeing viewers in the hundreds of thousands or more that are listening to this, agreeing with it, believing it, and creating a pact that they're going to turn from the light when they're in their transition. So that's the new narrative that's sort of spreading through the internet right now. How do you ladies feel about that? Reverend Scott, how do you feel about that?
Personally, I think it's very damaging. I think it's very wrong. And I have to question why this started. I mean, who benefits from a bunch of, like, lots of earthbound or spirits floating in space? Like, we have to take it a little bit farther, like who or what benefits? And I can tell you it's not the person that's, hovering between lifetimes. That doesn't benefit them. So I have heard this narrative. I totally disagree with it. I don't know who started it, but it has caught on like wildfire on the internet. I think it speaks to the fear that people have about dying in general. And it's just very damaging. And, I think there will be a lot of earthbound spirits, a lot of very confused spirits, if they follow that philosophy, that belief. And I'm kind of cringe every time I hear someone mention it, because it's like there's no rhyme or reason. I have heard that there's supposed to be like a blue light that you see, and that's the real light that you're supposed to go to. That's one narrative I've heard. And I'll tell you, I love watching near-death experiences on YouTube. I love watching it because I love hearing people's stories. And not one person has ever mentioned a blue light. Nobody. So, and I've watched hundreds of them. And so I don't know where this started. I think it's kind of dangerous, to be honest with you. So I totally disagree with it. No.
What do you think, Jordan?
I mean, no surprise. I also disagree. And I actually have a lot of concerns with that narrative, because I oftentimes will try to think of risks and trying to, my social work education, we were always looking at narratives that were being presented and going, well, who really benefits from this? What's the fallout of this? What's the impacts of this that are seen, but also the things that might be a little bit more hidden, right? I know we kind of mentioned before, when I think about divinity and the light and stepping into light consciousness, the idea of turning away from that, to me, seems very, very dark. And we have, as those of us who do removals, we do see the impacts on souls that do turn away from the light and how they do twist and become more dark. And so I have some concerns in regards of who benefits from that narrative, one, but then also I think about the people that are still alive today and the subconscious reprogramming of continuously hearing that narrative over and over and over again. And I think about how not all earthbounds, but many earthbounds are fragments and fractures of souls that are transitioning. And so if I have a subconscious belief system of the light is dangerous. I can't go. I'm going to get trapped. I'm going to be enslaved. There might be an aspect of my consciousness that's like, I'm take me on up. Like, guides, angels, come grab me. We're good to go. But there might be a fear-based aspect of my consciousness that might go, nope, I'm splitting. I'm staying earthbound. I'm now at this low dense frequency. And I'm easy targets for things that do have malicious intent, who do want to feed off of that fear. And so I have concerns with the subconscious reprogramming of that. And I can see why there would be a significant influx of earthbound spirits, because they're, and not for nothing, the demonization of those who do engage in rescue mediumship work, because now we're being utilized as tools for the evil people to slave people, which is not the case.
We're throwing them in the trap.
Yeah.
You know, I think the bigger picture of it is to actually pull people away from light consciousness, which many people call God or infinite intelligence or source, and creating an alternate God source, saying that the light is more alien and a karmic trap. People that are feeding into that already have a belief system that the karmics, that the cycles of reincarnation are punishment or delayed progress, or feeling like they don't want to be here on the planet because this is a lot of hard work. And many people have the narrative that Earth is a hell planet, or it's a planet of a lot of work and a lot of wounding. And so what's happening is people are feeding into that narrative, which is the larger narrative behind all of this. The foundation of it is to believe that life itself, existence in the earth plane and in physical presence, is punishment, not an actual gift given by source. Life itself and existence in the third dimension has always been a gift of awareness and experience. And often, many times, souls need to come back in various stages to be able to have deeper understandings of things. And when you're a younger soul, you'll sometimes see that you're impatient, you want it now, you feel you're being held back, you feel like you're being punished, you're feeling like, you know, they're forcing me to be here. That's an immature viewpoint of the soul experience. And as you become more of an older soul in this experience, which the older souls should be helping and supporting the younger souls, which there are no older, younger souls technically, only younger, older souls of the earth experience. So that many of us that have gone through the earth experience more often have been able to remember more of the reason why we decided to come here in the first place. We gain more patience, more understanding, more appreciation of the physical experience to begin with. So we're fine being here. We like being here. We like connecting to each other, because when you develop an older, more mature mentality of it, you start seeing that suffering is a choice and not something that we are meant to do here in the third dimension, but rather a test of the soul to see if the soul wants to suffer or if they'll be able to experience enlightenment through experience and choose not to suffer and choose love instead. But you have to go through those incarnations to be able to get to that mindset and that belief system. So the whole idea of being here is a punishment. I think that's the real problem that we have. That not going into light, yes, us as rescue mediums will have a lot more work to do. Angels in the light that are shepherds, they will have a lot more work to do. I'm not concerned about that as much as I'm concerned with people forgetting the gift of existence and life itself and their connection to source. That's what I'm more concerned about. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that was brilliantly said. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Amy. I think that was just brilliantly said. And you hit the nail on the head. So I really don't have anything else to add other than, I think we also come here to learn compassion for ourselves and others, because
Yes.
we are, we set these tests for ourselves, and they can be very traumatic sometimes, depending on how we see them. But back to you, Reverend Amy. I was very impressed by your explanation. It's excellent, and I can't really say anything more. So thank you.
Do you have anything to add to that, Jordan? Any concerns you have?
I mean, I agree with everything that you said, but just to like build off it, and it's when Amy says, the suffering is a choice, that doesn't mean that it's not easy. It's very hard, right? But it's a part of our growth, our soul's growth and development. And, as somebody who works as a clinical counselor, I will say the most growth and development that people generally go through, it's awful to say, but it's not when everything's sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
It's through challenge. It's through difficult moments when you really get to look at yourself and decide, what narratives do I really want to subscribe to? Where did I get those narratives or those viewpoints of myself and my limitations? Who told me that? And it's through that unpacking and doing that shadow work that people really start to step into who they are. But that came oftentimes, and I'd say most of the time, was through difficult moments. So suffering is not inherently bad, but it has uncomfortable experiences, but it can also lead to a lot of wonderful experiences. And I don't know if you ladies have anything to add on this, but I know for my own journey and going through my own shadow work, it was very difficult. It was very hard to go through the suffering and having to reface and address things. But I came out on the other side feeling so much better. I didn't even know how good I could feel. And so my concern, similar to what Amy was saying, is the rejection of light conscious, but also God, because I think about who benefits from that. And that would be the dark. It would be things with more malicious or not as, their best intentions are not our best intentions always. And so when I think about just, we all engage in attachment removal and spirit protection work, I could also see, as much as there might be an increase in earthbound spirits, I could also see an increase in souls that get taken into hostage situations as they're earthbound. I could see an increase in attachment removals happening. It's that rejection of God and our own divinity that makes me really concerned for the collective. But I also believe we also have a lot of support on the other side that are going to be coming in and supporting. I know a lot of souls came down at this specific time knowing that we would be going through this as a collective. And you have a lot of souls saying, I'm going to help, I'm going to support, I'm going to teach, I'm going to help provide spaces for community to help people understand that this is normal, to help guide them through it, etc. And just because somebody might be a newer or more younger soul on this planet doesn't mean that they're not mature in other planets or other realities as well. So I did want to say, because you might feel really mature, but then on Earth, you're like, I don't understand anybody here. What is all this that's happening? I don't get it. I don't like it. Because maybe your soul came from another place where it was very different than here. So you might feel like, I don't like it all. But that doesn't mean that you're not a mature soul. It just means that you might be newer to the Earth circuit.
Right.
So,
exactly. Thank you for creating that detail, because it's like, as I was told, and many of us have been told, there are no young or old souls. What we mean by that is saying there are some souls that decide to come to the Earth experience way before some other souls do. Some souls are out there experiencing other planets, other solar systems, other realities, other experiences. And then some souls have been actually here on the Earth for thousands and thousands of years. That is what we would consider an older soul, because they've been here longer, experiencing the Earth plane and the planet itself. It's hard to acclimate to this reality. It is. There's a lot here. And what happens is many souls get compromised by the denseness of this reality. And because we are a planet and reality of emotion, you mix density with emotion and you get a very messy situation. And in the dense emotions, we get reactive in those experiences. We lash out. We don't like the way it feels. And then we cave into those emotions even more. I mean, think about every time you were angry or had an argument with somebody, it would feed upon itself and get darker and darker as you would have those emotions and those experiences. And I think many souls go through that and they get compromised by this denseness. They create this reality and this belief system that this is a very hard, horrible reality to live in because of the denseness. But you start recognizing that we are divine beings living a physical experience, and we can adjust our vibration in the denseness. We can be light beings walking through the darkness and create the beacon of light that can get people to understand that they don't have to suffer through these dense emotions. They can create control and calm and serenity in those spaces instead, and get people to understand that feeling these emotions, even though they're hard, is still a choice. It's in that maturity that I was talking about, in that experience, that you learn to have patience with experiences and learning to control the emotional reaction to things, and you start having more of a calm response. Start thinking about how you really want to feel. Don't just react and have an automatic reaction and response. Try to start having a different opinion about your actual existence here on the planet, because it can be heaven on earth if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be hard. Granted, not everything is going to be the rainbows and unicorns, because we live in a planet of duality. We live where we have spiritual laws, the law of polarity. Where there is light, there is dark, and we somehow balance and we move in between the light and the dark on a constant basis, living in this reality. You choose, where does it tip? Does it go to light or does it go to dark? You get to make that choice. And that's why I was saying before, the whole narrative of saying that existence on this planet is a trap and we don't want to be here is avoiding the enlightenment experience of actually learning from being here and what the souls can transform into, and the wisdom and the strength that can be obtained from this experience. That is what I feel is negatively impacting people. They don't get to actually enjoy the experience of living. Rather, they're fearing their life. For one, they're avoiding it. They're waiting to die and waiting to go somewhere else to escape the entrapment of the incarnation cycle. And I understand the human mind was created to think and to have theoretical conversations and to question things. That's what we're meant to do. We want to question things and ask those deeper seated questions and to be inquisitive of existence itself. That's why we got to where we are today. We started asking questions. But we have to go back to practicality. We can't just start throwing things out that feel good or feel like they're shifting our consciousness because it's something that meets the narrative right now based on our negative mindset. We need to start looking at practicality. What have we already heard from the spirit world? We've had thousands of mediums give testimony of what it's like in the light. We have spirits coming down and saying how wonderful it is and how life in reincarnation is a choice. We have guides and angels that are helping us through the experience so that we can have more purpose and achievement and success in these lights. We're given everything we could possibly need in this experience. And so when people turn from that help and from that practical knowledge and experience and everything we've heard over thousands of years, that concerns me. Because again, it's not taking credibility of the actual facts that have been proven decade after decade of scientific and philosophical research of mediumship and spirit communication, that's now wiping it clean, saying none of it was true. It was all a lie. And that is what I feel is wrong with this new narrative coming up, because it's attacking more than just the soul. It's attacking many different people in that.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
the mediums out there are recognizing that they're being told that they're wrong through this narrative, that they're not actually talking to spirits in the light, they're not actually talking to guides and angels, and that this is just a false god that's creating this for us, and that we're all wrong. I want to see how mediums feel about that. If they're hearing about this narrative about not going into light, it affects more than just rescue mediums.
Absolutely, it does. And I also want to acknowledge for our audience that this is something that a lot of us, like, we've been in the field, we've had to face a lot of different things, deal with our own shadow work. We've had to practice, I don't want to say it mastering the emotions, but doing this work, doing rescue work, doing a little bit of that denser work, your emotions get heightened oftentimes when you're experiencing different types of spirits. Sometimes it might be a spiritual attack. Other times you're just feeling the spirit of, or the emotions of a spirit coming in. And so for us, we've had to really practice, I can't think of a better word other than mastering the emotions, but really needing to, what Amy was saying, taking time to slow it down, reflect, and review. And so in my counseling work, oftentimes, there's a narrative that I would talk to clients about is just because you feel something is your truth and that's your reality, it's just a feeling. It's just a response to the moment. It doesn't mean it's true. You could feel everyone hates you and everyone's judging you and nobody likes you and you're an awful person. And that's not the reality. That's just how you're feeling in the moment. And when I think about this narrative of, again, the light is a trap, don't go there, it invokes a lot of fear. And it's normal in this experience, as a human experience where we have a lot of emotion here, that when we have fear, our bodies and our nervous systems are designed to get out of there and to want to avoid facing the thing that's causing us fear. That is normal.
Right.
But as Amy was saying, take a moment to slow it down, recognize that just because we have an emotional response to something, that does not mean that it is true. That doesn't mean that that's the reality. Reflect, review for a moment. Is this something that is this what you actually feel this moment? Or is this just a normal, natural response to something? Or is this based on an experience you've had before, maybe, and it's invoking some emotion because it's similar enough? Like, take some moments to think about it. And that's something you can do in your everyday life, because we're always going through the ebb and flows of emotion. So I know we're talking about it from a very high concept spiritual lens, but you can take that and do that in your daily life too, to practice building tolerance when you do have an emotional experience that feels uncomfortable. Because it's natural that when we have really strong emotions, my therapist brain, parts of our brain that are for logic and reasoning shut down. We don't critically reflect. We don't react the same way because our bodies, our nervous system's in fear mode. So don't let your emotions overtake it. Don't let the fear overtake it. Pause. Reflect. That's my 2 cents.
Now, Jordan, you would also mention, because of spirit souls not going into the light, not only will that create them to be earthbound, but it can also create an influx of attachments as well, because when their souls find that they turn from the light and they're lacking source energy and they're feeling depleted and scared and lost and confused, they're going to start searching out beings of light, which is more of a substitute light source that they couldn't find now that they lowered their frequency out of light consciousness. They're going to start searching for other forms of light. And that's people. That's other forms of spirit energy that's existing in the physical realm. Sheila, how do you feel? Like, do you feel like there's going to be an influx, a larger amount of attachments in the future because of this?
Yes. Especially if there's that fear of going into the light, they'll just turn and head right back to Earth. And so I do feel there will be an influx now. And again, who is driving this? Like, who really wants this to happen? Well, the only thing I can think of is the darkness, the the dark energy that feeds on fear, as Jordan was saying. So,
Yeah.
I do feel that, we're going to have an influx because, people are afraid. And this again triggers the fear response. Oh my God, if I go into the light, I'm going to start the reincarnation cycle all over again. Well, where are you going to go? I mean, other than float around in space or back to Earth? So, I'm going to have to say, I agree. There's going to be more. Absolutely.
And I think, when people hear the word attachment,
Right.
their first thought is to go to something a negative, that the souls or spirits are attacking us by attaching to us, embedding inside of us, and holding space inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
People see that as an attack. Can you explain how it may actually not be an attack, but something rather maybe soothing for the earthbound soul that's just looking for someone to find peace with?
Yeah. Me? They want me to
Yes.
say. Well, yeah, because earthbounds will go towards energy that they recognize. So if they were looking for a mother, they would maybe attach to a very maternal person. Or if the person may have the same illnesses that the spirit had when they were, alive, there would be some sort of similarity that the attachment would feel with the host. And that sounds even weird, but but it's so it's not always malicious. It's a sense of trying to find peace and happiness or comfort, soulless. Like, so they go towards the energy that they recognize or they see and that they feel comfortable with. And that's just my opinion there. So it's not always evil. They're not always evil. They're lost, they're confused, and they're scared, basically.
Well, I find the majority of attachments aren't evil at all. And I don't even like using the word evil, because I think the word evil is sensationalized quite a bit. That word's created to explain or describe something that is not here to be useful or helpful or of God. It's kind of like the opposite of God. But if you spell evil backwards, it's live. It is. Yep. And so evil itself, and I just want to explain in my opinion, I think when people say something's evil, that's their opinion, that's their perception, doesn't make it true. If a spirit is wounded and they're lashing out and they're angry and they're energetically projecting a lot of this frustration, somebody may see it as an energetic attack and go, "Oh my gosh, this soul is evil, and I have to banish them and call in a priest and get an exorcism." And it would be nice to see more education about what attachments are. And the majority, I'm going to say a large majority of spirits that are on the lower plane, what we call earthbound, are attaching to people more of comfort and what I call resonance. Resonance is a vibrational match to someone or something that you find similarities in. And in that resonance, souls are seeking out other people or other energies that they relate to, they find familiar vibrational matches with. You could be resonance of an earthbound spirit that's in your vicinity or even on the other side of the world. But if you have enough similarities between the two of you, that's enough to bring that soul into your aura, energy field, and deeper into your physical body. That doesn't mean it's an attack. It means the soul that's not in a physical body is looking for assistance from someone who is in a physical body. The majority of attachments are this case, this scenario. So the moment I think we can move out of fear-based belief systems and evil definitions, we can start changing the perception a little bit about why souls do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I want there to be a little bit more education on that, which is why we do the show and why we bring wonderful guests on, such as Reverend Sheila Scott, who does a lot of these attachments removal. And, you know, whenever I do get interviewed on other podcasts, everybody wants to hear, what's the darkest case, the scariest case you've ever had? And I think if the entertainment business could stop hyping and sensationalizing all evil presences and scenarios and situations, we wouldn't have to fight as hard to get people to understand that energy just is energy. We are conscious beings connected to each other, resonating with each other, and looking for resolution. That's it. But unfortunately, we live in a world where people love to be scared through entertainment purposes. Go to a haunted house during Halloween. You know, tell a spooky story. Tell people a fictitious story. You know, oh, did you hear about that haunted location? But it would be great if the entertainment business would stop hyping demons and evil. And you're going to be attacked. I think our job would be a whole lot easier if we didn't have all of that as well. I'm sure, Sheila, that you've had a lot of people coming to you, and probably one of their first questions are, I'm being attacked, or is this evil, or what can I do? Have you had those experiences often?
Yeah, it's actually, I'm finding it's getting more and more. I guess because I'm getting known. So more and more people are saying I'm under attack, and you know, I've got attachment, or I think I'm possessed, and it's like, no, you just need to help a spirit move on, or I'll do that for you. And you know, but there's that narrative. There's definitely that narrative that they're, you know, something's trying to take them over, right? So they'll become possessed, and it's not that. That's no, that's just a no. So I have to do a lot of counseling around that, and just calm people as much as possible, and just say, look, the angels will handle the heavy lifting here. You just follow my directions. So that's what that's why I handle it. But
I'm sure, Jordan, you get a lot of those cases too with the work that you do.
Oh yeah. I think, again, my brain always goes to, you know, looking at subconscious belief systems, because we know that free will is a thing. And even though we might consciously believe something, our subconscious might believe differently because of wounding, because of life experiences, because of a whole bunch of things we've talked about on the show. And so when I think about the sensationalism of the dark, of the evil, of everything's an attack, keep in mind your subconscious is taking that, and now it's going to naturally perceive as something different outside of itself as bad. And that's just not true. Right. And so the last thing you want is for it to expect something bad, because free will, we're expecting it, we're allowing it, and now things are going to amplify. So as Sheila said, there's a lot of counseling too for folks who, you know, who do have some spirit attachments, to help recognize that not everything is a spiritual attack, especially, again, because it's understandable when something is with you and you can't see it, you can't get rid of it the same way. That's scary. That's scary for us. It's scary for our nervous system. It's scary for our bodies. Our body has a natural response. It goes into fight or flight, all the things. These are normal. However, it doesn't have to be as bad as what I think as a collective it's become. And I think we're slowly moving outside of that a little bit more, hopefully with, you know, more education, more awareness, more practitioners coming in and providing support for all aspects of the person, but also their subconscious and their body and nervous system, understanding spirit law and how the spirit world works. I think understanding is a big part, which again is why we have this show. Because we find that there's not enough conversations happening on that front. Because, you know,
speaking of
everything's a demon.
Where do you see this work going? We talked about a little bit about, you know, how we all kind of got involved in rescue mediumship in several stages in development and evolution of this work. Where do you guys kind of see this work going, and the new recruits that are coming on to do this work? What advice would you have for them, Jordan, and where do you kind of see this work going?
Well, I have where I hope it goes, and that's the line that I'm working in to try to get it there. But I think, you know, when I think about why spirit I spent many years being a clinical counselor. I always worked in trauma. When I think about spirit attachments, when I think about attachment removal, I think about spiritual attacks. And not even an attack, as Amy was saying, just feeling something different outside yourself. My therapist brain recognized that even though we are a soul, we're still having a human experience. Our body and our nervous system has been taught and conditioned to do certain things. And so it's not uncommon that even when I do an attachment removal, similar to a PTSD response, the body has learned a response, and therefore the body will mimic as if it's still continuing to be attacked. And then people go, oh, I'm being attacked. And now they've manifested their own attachment, which is a whole other thing, which we can talk about another day. So I'm hoping, my hope is that the field will go into more of an education, not only in spirit law and understanding who to call in, different types of beings, what to do, helping people find their own divinity, but doing a lot of wounding work, doing a lot of inner healing work, shedding the ego, stepping into your power. I hope that happens a lot more. But I also, fingers crossed, hope that one day we can have a little bit more support and cross understanding with clinical counseling work, hypnosis work, doctors, mental health professional, physical health, because there's a lot of overlap. And to be honest with you, and just knowing what I've learned through doing my mediumship work with Amy, reading different things from the spiritualist lens, religious lens, and then psychiatry and psychology, a lot of the times we're all talking about the same thing. We're just using different language. So I would like to see more understanding across the board and see more of an amalgamation emerging of that, because I will die on this hill from what my team's always taught me is that spiritual protection comes from having a strong inner core, which Amy talks about. And so part of that is doing your inner work, which I think we can all kind of attest to. So I would like to see that more, but a part of that is not, again, understanding your own divinity and understanding the power that you have. And part of that is not being afraid. Recognizing the power you have, recognizing not everything is evil, not everything's an attack. Just because something's best interests do not align with yours does not make it bad. It just means it's different. Learning who to call in order to help support that situation and help you to enforce your free will. I could go on and on and on, but that's where I hope it's going. And that's the hill that I will die on to get it moving in that direction.
I'd love to hear Sheila's perspective. She's been doing this work for decades now, and what she's seen in the past. Can that maybe help kind of give you a better idea of what you foresee in the future?
Well, I've learned that spirit release is only half of the healing process. Yes, you get rid of the spirit, but now this person, like, what is it inside them that was wounded that allowed this attachment to happen? Yeah. So so that has to be addressed. And so Jordan's on the right track about doing the inner work and therapy and hypnosis to help heal those deep inner wounds that we all get, like we all have it in our just being human. But so I have found that it's that basically the removing the spirit is just part of the issue and part of the healing, and that further sort of help is needed for these for the clients. And I've learned that over the years because I've just following up with clients, they still feel like something's not right, and it's not that the spirit's still there, although they may think that. It's that there's that wound that is wide open and it needs to be healed, so that they don't attract something else. And that's been my learning over the last 10 years. That's what I found.
Oh.
So Jordan's right on.
I, as a trauma counselor and working a lot in domestic violence, sexual assault, like I always worked in trauma, I could see the overlap with spirit attachments, how it's inherently traumatic to the body, to the nervous system, to the conscious, to the subconscious. And so I hope we can merge those two a little bit more, because as much as this is a spiritual issue, we're still in a physical body. We're still having a human experience. Our system has a systems designed to work in a way. And I remember way back when, Amy, when you would teach me about attachments, you're like, you're going to have some, but a lot of them are going to be manifested. And that is what I have seen. Even though the spirit is gone, there's this manifested energy that keeps coming up and rearing its head because the body, the nervous system is still in a state of fight or flight, and it's still traumatized. So that
Right.
wound needs to be addressed. But as Sheila was saying, the wound that allowed the spirit to come in the first place needs to be addressed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think people need to look at all aspects of rescue work. Spirit rescue itself has many categories. Spirit releasement is one of them. And you guys talked a lot about the evolution of that work, which I absolutely agree with, being proactive, which we advocate often, about counseling individuals about their own energy, being more spiritual sovereign over their energy, understanding the concepts of divine law, spiritual law as well. But we also have other categories, that are in it, such as land clearing and clearing spirits from homes and having people feel threatened by spirit, just, going to sleep at night and feeling like someone breathing over their bed, or children always saying, I see a shadow figure over on the side. And I think, and not only that, but the death process itself.
Yes.
Education of the death process. So where I like to see the evolution of rescue work to go more into conscious studies,
Yes.
the evolution of our consciousness, the fractal states of our consciousness, the vibrational evolution of our consciousness as well, which I'm getting heavily involved in and learning about through metaphysics and conscious studies and psychic studies. I think being able to educate people about the death process, the choices, their vibrational state, how to be able to release wounding immediately and be able to move into these transitionary states into the light is wonderful. Breaking away from cultural and religious restrictions that hold people back from crossing over would also be a great way to help educate the public about how they're not damned if they didn't do certain things in their life as well. Teaching people about the resonance of spaces and consciousness of homes and the energy of places, and recognizing that environments hold energy like a memory imprint, and it may not always be spiritual energy. So a lot of that education as well. And I think also getting people out of the fear-based mentality about spirit world in general is wonderful. I think one thing that rescue mediums are always being accused of is advocating dark encounters or promoting that dark spirits exist and that evil exists. And that's not true. That's a stereotype that I'm trying to help the rescue community move away from. We're actually advocating the release of fear itself and to move away from fear, self-sovereignty, empowerment, positive energy, being able to heal and move into transition into the light when you're ready. We advocate for that more than anything else. We just are aware that humanity hasn't evolved past this pain and suffering just yet. And just because people move out of their physical body doesn't mean they move out of their emotional mental pain. They sometimes hold on to it, which creates the earthbound spirit. So I think as you guys were talking, more and more people need to be able to communicate their feelings and express their psychological or mental concerns, get it out in the open, talk about it, and not be afraid that people are going to judge you because you are having a hard time. I think there's a lot that needs to change in the rescue community going forward, but mostly education, I think, is really needed. Less work if we can educate the public more, and then the public can then do their own work, which creates less work for the rescue medium and spirit releasement specialists. I love for us to all become educators rather than worker bees, but then that's my hope for the future. So
I love it.
I think we had a great show, a lot of information. I know it was really intense, Liz, talking about not going into light and the new narrative that's really coming out. And it's also really hard to hear. And I know a lot of developing rescue mediums are listening to our stories and going, oh my gosh, you've been through so much. And that's so hard. And I don't want all that resistance, and I don't want to be judged. And I think that's why we kind of described our personal journeys, and understanding that we had to listen to our hearts. We had to listen to what we felt was right, even when we're being faced with resistance and derogatory comments and feeling judged and biases against us. You know, many of us that have been in the rescue community, we've been doing the hard work so that the future rescue mediums don't have to. And so I love the idea of new rescue mediums coming in and not having to deal with all that, and having an easier time, which is why I've been doing the work that I do, and which is why I think Reverend Sheila Scott's doing the work that she has and all the education, because I keep hearing your guides say they want you to teach more. So yeah, they're saying it. So, and we'd love to have you back on the show to educate people more about the work that you do. Because again, I think the future is awareness in this work. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm so truly honored, and it was great to speak with both of you, and you know, really all came together. So thank you again for having me on, Amy, and great to see you, Jordan. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for watching with us. Again, it was intense, but it was powerful. Good messages here. We'd love to hear from some of you. And we do have an email address, which Jordan will say soon, but we also have the comment section. We do have ways for you to connect with us. We'd love to hear your questions, your concerns about getting into this work. We would even love to hear your opinion about why you wouldn't want to do rescue mediumship. We've heard it from various sources, but everybody has the right to be heard. Everybody has the right to their opinion. We're all voicing our opinions, and we'd love to hear yours, because this is a safe place for everyone to be able to talk about anything that they feel is true to them. So we invite it, and we would love to hear from you. And Jordan, how can they reach out to us if they do want to email us?
Well, you can reach out to us at spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com. We love the comments, as Amy said. And a part of that is also if you have questions or concerns, for those of us who have been in it a little bit longer, maybe we can help quell some of those fears. As Amy said, we're all about demystifying the fear and going back into empowerment.
Exactly. Well said. Thank you again, Reverend Sheila Scott, for being our guest. We're looking forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you.
And thank you. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.